Hey Pac-Man, how'd your tiny arcade machine turn out? Good to know. I will get video game content to work on this channel even if I have to cheat to do it. And that means doing toys that are also video games. Presenting Tiny Arcade by Super Impulse, a toy company known for making miniature versions of some of your favorite childhood classic toys in fully operational form. And now they're doing tiny little arcade cabinets, which you can tell by my hand are exceptionally tiny, smaller than the ones you're probably used to seeing cluttering up the shelves over at Walmart or Target. So yeah, this is a tiny replica of a classic arcade machine, in this case, Pac-Man. And like I say replica, it's very much like the original. There are some aesthetic differences. The shape is different from any classic Pac-Man machine that I have ever seen or could look up on Google. However, detail-wise, it's done very well. So, stickers on all three of its prominent sides do accurately recreate the artwork from the original games. You can see, yeah, they weren't quite sure how they wanted Pac-Man to look back in the day. He looks like he has not slept in many, many nights, which is probably why he's seeing ghosts. But that is the original arcade artwork. That is very, very nicely done. And same up with the marquee. Very, very well done. This is probably the most fun I have with it, is the fact that it looks so nice. It looks so natural because it's the right shape, it's the right proportions. If you've seen the ones that are at Walmart, they look like arcade cabinets. They have the right shape, but they're not the right proportions, are they? They don't look like a mini arcade machine. They are shaped like an arcade machine. There's a very distinct difference here. Now, the biggest thing about these is they work. And I saw this at Toys R Us. Rest in peace. I saw this and I stared at it for I don't know, a good 5 minutes trying to figure out if this thing actually worked or if it just played like a little demo or if it's just like a pre-done animation or whatever. But no, fully functioning. It's quite amazing. So I'm going to show that off here in a minute, but we're going to look at the other cabinets in the assortment first, and then I'll save the gameplay until later because I'm going to turn down the lights because, no, you'll see why. But I'll tell you right now that the one difference you find between this and the ones you'll find at the shelves is, yeah, that little loop there, that's supposed to have a key ring attached to it. Now, I took it off because it's better for photos, and I have so much fun taking photos of these things with any of my figures that are in scale. And if you saw my Twitter account recently, you'd have seen a few of those. But yeah, I couldn't imagine any situation where I would want this thing dangling from a chain. I mean, it's way too big for your pocket, so that's no. I wouldn't put this in a purse because it's an actual pixel screen. And the best thing I could think of is to put it on a con bag. And I've lost much smaller dangly things at cons than this. Make up what you will of that statement on your own. But for the most part, I find it's just best as a nice little desktop toy that you can just pick up and play your favorite classic video game whenever you want. And there are some options. So if you have Pac-Man, you have to have Miss Pac-Man, which are different games, and it's more than just different mazes and whatnot. On top of that, we also have, for variety's sake, Space Invaders, another vintage classic, one of the classic iconic arcade machines. And then we have Galaxian, a game made to compete with Space Invaders, now owned by the same company as Space Invaders. Oh, how that is ironic. But again, I'm going to take a look real quick at all of the artwork. You can see Miss Pac-Man done up. They had a little bit better idea of what Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man looked like at this time, so everything's detailed a little bit nicer there. And they went a little bit more all out with the design on that old machine, as you can tell. Again, really nicely done. Space Invaders, likewise. Go ahead and show you the labeling there. Marquee up top with the logo. Down here, I kind of wish there were there's a hole cut out and a fake little coin slot attached. That would have been funny. But Space Invaders artwork, I love this style. This is so retro. Just really kind of dig that old school aesthetic. And then we have Galaxian, nice bold logo at the top, if it would focus on that. Bugs on the bottom, whatever. And then, yeah, all your artwork. And again, it's very sci-fi. All right, so that's physically what you get. You will note that even the games that do not use buttons have buttons because, well, one of them is a start button. And again, they all kind of use the same mold, don't they? So, yeah, not too big of a surprise there. But yeah, just a sense of scale before we begin with the demos, here's a 66 action Mega Man that I showed off recently in a video, and then here's a popular Legends class Transformer. So you can kind of see where I really enjoyed just taking photos of these things because I have so many toys that scale so perfectly to these things. Oh, it's a lot of fun. I want more of these just so I have a tiny arcade that I can stream like a whole photo shoot from. Okay, so that's enough rambling about everything that you can see for your own selves. Let's go gameplay. Now, the first thing you're going to notice here is backlight. Great, which is why I had to turn off the lights to get this part. And the marquee is backlit as well, which is such a small detail, but it's an appreciated one because it makes the effect and the accuracy so much nicer. Also, yeah, it plays exactly like the original, right down to the opening. Whoa. Hang on. I'll go ahead and hit that button on the left to start, and then I'll use my little finger, my index finger, in order to actually operate Pac-Man and play through a little bit of the original. Well, that's a ghost. So you can see, yes, it's a proper pixel screen. It's not a cheap little LCD where it's just black and white and the images are in fixed locations. It's a proper emulation. This is the real game. This is a real, fully developed version of Pac-Man in super tiny form, and it's entirely playable. I will say, the stick is relatively responsive. This works pretty well. You know, as long as I'm actually looking at the real screen and not through the viewfinder, I can actually see where the dots are, and I'm actually doing fairly well here. I didn't mean to play an entire maze, but it's working out pretty well. So yeah, I might as well complete it just so you guys can see. It works and looks exactly like the old one. There we go. Simple as that. Though, yes, you might get annoyed by the music at some point because, hey, old games only had sound effects. Okay, next game. Ms. Pac-Man next, complete with the opening that identifies everybody. So, yeah, it's Ms. Pac-Man. Let's see how this one turned out. Okay, so for starters, while the sound effect's not quite as classic as the original, far more tolerable to listen to over the long term. I would actually feel more comfortable playing this more often than I would even the original Pac-Man. Now, it's not just Pac-Man with a bow. They did make some gameplay changes. The ghosts behave a little bit differently. And as you can see, it's a completely different layout to the maze. I think this maze is actually a little bit easier than the original. And that's because Miss Pac-Man has several mazes. And yeah, I've actually played through enough to tell you not only are all the original mazes in here, but also the cutscenes between certain levels. So everything is accurate. Like I said, this is a completely accurate translation of the original game, perfectly emulated. This is extremely well done. Space Invaders. Alright, so no mazes, and I'll actually need the buttons for this, so hopefully I can keep my fingers out of the view. So, just like old Space Invaders, so move left and right, fire away at the oncoming alien horde. We'll admit, definitely, by shooter standards, definitely a little bit more boring than the old school stuff. By now, you might have noticed that up at the top, you can actually see the high scores, and as long as you have actual batteries in the machine, and they actually work, it does retain the high score. That's another level of detail I didn't expect, and it's an extremely appreciated one, especially if this is something you just pick up and play to challenge yourself every now and then, which I figure... Whoa! Oh god, that's loud. Oh, jeez, I wasn't even looking at it. I got it. Boom, boom, boom. Once again, I don't mean finish the stage, but we finished the stage. So, yeah, just like you remember it. Last up, Galaxian, the one I admit I had the least experience with out of the original games in this lineup. Yeah, so just like the others, backlit, right down to the marquee, retains the high score, and everything is fully animated and working. Let's go. You can definitely see, if you've never seen Galaxian before, definitely Space Invaders. The enemy hordes have a different movement pattern to them, so they tend to attack individually, and your ship is a lot larger, so you are a bigger target when they start diving at you. I find this to be the hardest of the 4 games, at least if you're familiar with the Pac-Man mazes. Also, kind of the most ambitious because the graphics and the sound effects are a little bit more complicated than the others. Wow, that did not take long. Also, that star pattern in the background, adding an extra layer of animation, but that also means it's a little bit harder to tell the enemies' shots from the stars in the back. So, maybe out of the ones, this was maybe the most difficult to play because, well, it's got the most going on visually to keep track of on such a tiny little screen. But still, it works really well, doesn't it? And that, my friends, is the Tiny Arcade. I am legitimately blown away by these things. It is absolutely spectacular to see just how well done they are and how well they replicate just the idea of being a mini arcade cabinet fully working. It is really, really impressive just how good of a job they are. They definitely set themselves apart from the ones that you'd see previous to this, some of which weren't even actual screens. Not only were they not color, they were the old LCD style, like the old Tiger Arcade games where it's fixed location graphics. It's not actually the game. These are actually the game. Like, I'm so impressed that they got this games to work so well in such a tiny little package. And it's only like a couple bucks more than their competitors for a far more accurate emulation. Yeah, so 20 bucks is a little bit much for old games like this, and usually they have cheaper options if you want to play on a console or a PC, but the sheer novelty of it, and if you're like me and you like taking photos with little tiny figurines, yeah, there's a lot of charm to these things, and just incredibly well done. I did not expect them to be as good as they were.